November 28, 1945, Camp McCoy, Wisconsin. Yuki Tanaka pressed her face against the mess hall window, watching American soldiers distribute extra blankets to the new arrivals from Japan. Her breath fogged the glass as she whispered prayers, not for liberation, but for permission to stay. The smell of fresh bread from the kitchen mixed with Wisconsin pine, and for the first time in her life, captivity smelled like home. But why would a daughter of samurai choose imprisonment in enemy land over returning to her ancestors? 6 months earlier, the air inside the converted cargo hold of USS Benevolence tasted of rust and fear. 23 Japanese women huddled in the darkness, their wrists still bearing rope marks from Okinawa's caves. Among 4, former nurse at the 62nd Infantry Field Hospital clutched a torn photograph of her parents' shrine in Nagasaki. Beside her, Michiko Sato, 19, daughter of a naval commander, bit her lip until it bled rather than show weakness. The third woman who would shape their fate, Haruko Yamamoto, 31, widow of a Zero pilot, sat rigid against the metal wall, her eyes closed, preparing for death. The ship's engines thrummed through their bones. 4 days since surrender. 4 days since their world collapsed. They had been captured treating wounded soldiers in caves, refusing to abandon their posts even as American flamethrowers approached. Now they sailed toward the demon land their teachers had described since childhood. America, where blue-eyed devils ate human flesh and kept Japanese skulls as trophies. Michiko's fingernails dug into her palms. They will torture us for information about troop movements. We know nothing valuable, Haruko said, her voice steady as temple bells. We are nurses, cooks, radio operators. Then they will use us for other purposes? Michiko couldn't finish. Every woman knew the stories from Manchuria, from the Philippines. What happened to women in war? The metal door clanged open. Sunlight blazed through, momentarily blinding them. A figure stepped forward, tall, impossibly tall, blocking the light. The women pressed back against the wall. This was it, the beginning of their torment. "Ladies," the figure said in broken Japanese, "food time. Please, eating now." As their eyes adjusted, they saw him clearly. Private First Class Robert Mitchell, 6'2", corn-fed Iowa farm boy with shoulders that barely fit through the doorway. His uniform was pressed, his boots polished to mirrors. But it was his face that made Yuki's breath catch. Square jaw, yes, but softened by laugh lines. Blue eyes, certainly, but warm as summer sky, not the cold demon eyes of propaganda posters. He set down a tray of sandwiches, white bread, real white bread, and stepped back, hands visible, movements slow and unthreatening. "Spam and cheese," he said, switching to English, then attempting Japanese again. "Good, safe. I'm making myself." Haruko was first to move. She had seen too much death to fear it anymore. She took a sandwich, bit into it. The bread was soft as clouds. The meat, salty and rich. Tears ran down her face as she chewed. When had she last tasted anything but rice balls and dried fish? When had anyone fed her without demanding something in return? Private Mitchell smiled, actually smiled, and left more water bottles than there were women. "Call if needing," he said, and closed the door gently. Not slammed. Closed. The women ate in silence, each bite a betrayal of everything they'd been taught. The enemy's food should taste of poison, of corruption. Instead, it tasted of plenty, of a nation that could waste meat and sandwiches for prisoners while Japan starved. 3 days later, they docked in San Francisco. The women expected gallows, detention cells, interrogation chambers. Instead, buses waited. Clean buses with cushioned seats. Yuki pressed against the window as they drove inland, her mind reeling at the impossibility of it all. No bomb craters, no burned cities, no skeleton children begging in the streets. America bloomed fat and green, untouched by war's fingers. Houses stood whole, with lawns of pure grass just for beauty. Cars, hundreds of cars, chromium gleaming in California sun. People walked freely, laughing, carrying shopping bags full to bursting. "It's not real," Michiko whispered. "It's a show, like Potemkin villages." But mile after mile, hour after hour, the prosperity continued. When they stopped for fuel in Sacramento, Yuki watched a teenage boy casually throw away half a hamburger. Throw, away, food. Her stomach, even full of sandwiches, clenched at the waist. In Tokyo, people killed for less. Camp McCoy sprawled across Wisconsin farmland like a small city. Barracks stretched in neat rows, painted white with green trim. But these barracks had windows, glass windows, and doors that locked from the inside. "You control your own locks," explained Sergeant James Sullivan, their block supervisor. Another giant. Were all American men giants? But this one with red hair like sunset and freckles across his nose. Privacy. Every person deserves privacy. Privacy? In Japan, Yuki had slept in rooms with 40 others, lucky if a curtain separated her from the next cot. Here, she shared with only 3 others, each with her own bed, her own footlocker, her own space to exist. That first night, lying on an actual mattress, not straw, not bare wood, but a mattress with springs and cotton, Yuki stared at the ceiling and felt her world reshaping. Everything was backwards. The enemies were kind. The demons had human faces. The land of devils grew flowers. But it was the next morning that truly shattered her understanding. Breakfast. They walked to the mess hall expecting thin rice gruel, perhaps some pickled vegetables if fortunate. Instead, eggs, bacon, toast, butter, real butter, not margarine, not memory of butter, but yellow cream spread thick. Coffee with sugar, actual white sugar, and milk. Fresh milk. "This is what American prisoners eat?" Haruko asked Sergeant Sullivan. He looked confused. "Well, yes, Geneva Convention standards. Actually, you get the same rations as our troops, 3,500 calories daily." 3,500. In Tokyo, before capture, Yuki had survived on 900 calories when lucky. Her patients, dying soldiers, had made do with 600. And here, as prisoners of the nation they'd tried to destroy, they ate like empresses. Michiko refused the food at first. "It's humiliation. They fatten us to show Japanese weakness." But by the 3rd day, hunger won. She ate eggs and wept, each bite delicious shame. How could they return home and explain this, that the enemy fed them better than their own emperor? A week into captivity, an incident shook them. Private Dale Harrison, drunk on smuggled whiskey, cornered Yuki behind the laundry building. His breath stank of alcohol and cigarettes as he pressed close, his hands reaching. This was it, she thought, the real America showing itself, the propaganda proving true. Then Private Mitchell appeared, pulling Harrison away, slamming him against the wall. "You touch her again, I'll break your arms. These women are under protection. Our protection." Harrison stumbled away, and Mitchell turned to Yuki, his face red with anger and embarrassment. "I'm sorry. So sorry. This shouldn't happen. Won't happen again." He reported Harrison himself. The drunk private was transferred within 2 days, court-martialed within a week. Justice. For a Japanese prisoner. Against an American soldier. That night, Yuki couldn't sleep. Her world had no compass anymore. North was south, evil was good, enemies were protectors. She rose and walked to the window, staring at Wisconsin stars, same stars as over Nagasaki, but in an alien sky. December arrived with snow that transformed Camp McCoy into something from a German fairy tale. The Japanese women had never seen such snow, thick, white, pure as temple offerings. They stood at windows watching American guards build snowmen with carrot noses, throwing snowballs like children. The war that had burned their cities seemed impossible in this white silence. Work assignments began the second week. Not hard labor, not punishment details, but office work. Translation. Filing. Yuki found herself in the camp hospital, her nursing skills suddenly valuable. The American medical officer, Captain David Warner, a gentleman from Vermont with prematurely gray hair, treated her as colleague, not prisoner. "Your technique with sutures," he said, watching her stitch a guard's cut hand. "Where did you train?" "Kyoto Imperial University, before the war." "Fine school. We studied some of their research at Harvard Medical." "Harvard." He spoke as if Japan and America had been colleagues once, sharing knowledge like neighbors sharing rice, as if war was just an interruption in a longer conversation. The camp routine settled into strange comfort. Wake at 0600 to hot water, always hot water, miraculous endless hot water, for showers. Breakfast at 700, pancakes on Sundays with maple syrup that tasted like liquid gold. Work from 800 to 1700 with full hour for lunch. Evenings free for reading, writing, walking within the compound. The library amazed them most. Thousands of books, including Japanese titles. Haruko found a copy of The Tale of Genji and cried, holding it like a lost child. Michiko discovered American magazines, Life, Saturday Evening Post, full of advertisements for cars, refrigerators, washing machines. The casual wealth staggered her. Women in the ads wore different dresses in every picture, as if clothing was infinite. "Look," she showed Yuki a Sears catalog. "They sell houses, from a book. You order a house like ordering rice." 3 weeks before Christmas, packages arrived from the Red Cross. Not just basics, soap, toothpaste, but luxuries, chocolate bars, cigarettes, coffee, silk stockings. Silk! When Japan's entire silk production went to parachutes, American prisoners received stockings. That evening, Sergeant Sullivan brought a radio to their barracks. "Thought you might enjoy some music." The radio crackled to life. Glenn Miller Orchestra flowed out, smooth as honey. Then news. Calm news. No propaganda, no emperor worship, just a man discussing weather and crop reports. Then more music. The Andrews Sisters. Bing Crosby singing about White Christmas. Michiko found herself humming along. She stopped, horrified at her betrayal, but the melody continued in her head. American music settling into Japanese hearts like seeds in soil. Letters were allowed after the first month. Yuki wrote to her parents, not knowing if they lived. The atomic bomb had fallen on Nagasaki 3 months ago. Her letter was simple. "I am alive. I am safe. I am treated well." She couldn't write the truth. "I eat better as America's prisoner than I ever did as Japan's daughter." The response came 3 weeks later, forwarded through Red Cross channels. Her mother's handwriting, shaky but alive. "House destroyed. Father killed in bombing. Living with cousins in countryside. No food. Winter is hard." Yuki read it in the mess hall, surrounded by the smell of pot roast and fresh bread. Her father dead. Her mother starving. While she ate American beef and slept in American warmth. The guilt tasted bitter as ash, but the food still went down. Survival makes hypocrites of everyone. Haruko received no letters. Her husband was dead, her family in Tokyo presumably burned in the March firebombing. She had no one to betray with her survival. So she appointed herself keeper of the other's shame, the one who could look clearly at their situation. "We are pets," she said one night as they listened to Jack Benny on the radio. Well-fed pets in a comfortable cage. "Better than dead heroes?" Yuki replied, surprising herself with the honesty. "Is it?" Haruko's eyes were dark as winter rivers. "What will we tell our children? That we enjoyed captivity? That we preferred enemy food to Japanese honor?" There was no answer, only the radio playing Don't sit under the apple tree while snow fell on Wisconsin. Christmas approached with alien festivity. The Americans decorated everything: trees, buildings, even the guard towers sprouted wreaths. Kitchen smells grew rich with cinnamon and nutmeg, spices the Japanese women had never tasted. Private Mitchell, who had become their unofficial guardian, brought them a small tree for their barracks. "No one should be without Christmas tree," he said, then caught himself. "Sorry, I know you have different beliefs." "We had Christmas in Japan, too," Yuki said quietly. "Before the war, stores sold cakes, children sang songs." Mitchell's face brightened. "Then you'll help decorate?" They made origami cranes instead of angels, paper chains from old magazines. Michiko folded stars from silver cigarette foil. As they worked, Mitchell talked about home, his family's dairy farm in Iowa, his girl Margaret waiting for him, his plans to study agriculture after discharge. "Why are you kind to us?" Haruko asked suddenly. "We tried to kill you." Mitchell stopped stringing popcorn. His hands, so large they could snap their necks, trembled slightly. "My brother died at Iwo Jima. Tommy, 19 years old." The women froze. Here it comes, they thought, the anger, the revenge. "For 3 months I hated every Japanese person alive, wanted to kill them all." He resumed stringing popcorn, each movement careful. "Then I met you, and you're just people. Scared people trying to survive, like Tommy was, like we all are." He stood to place the star atop the tree. "Besides, my mother raised me right. She said treating enemies with cruelty makes you cruel. Treating them with kindness makes you kind. I'd rather be kind." On Christmas Eve, the camp commander authorized a special meal. Turkey, entire birds, golden and glistening. Mashed potatoes like white mountains, gravy, cranberry sauce, pumpkin pie. The Japanese women sat at tables with checkered cloths, eating until their stomachs hurt, while outside their homeland starved through winter. After dinner, the guards organized entertainment. Private Harrison was gone, but others had formed a small band. They played swing music, jazz, songs that made feet move involuntarily. Some German prisoners from the other compound performed a violin concert. Then someone called out, "What about the Japanese ladies? Any songs from home?" Michiko stood, surprising everyone, especially herself. She sang "Sakura," the cherry blossom song, her voice clear as temple bells. The mess hall fell silent. Even the German prisoners stopped talking. When she finished, applause erupted. American hands clapping for Japanese music. The world upside down. That night, lying in bed, Yuki smelled cinnamon and pine, turkey and coffee, the scent of American abundance. Through the window, she saw guards walking their rounds, some humming Christmas carols. These men who should be her enemies had become her protectors. This prison had become her refuge. A letter from her mother had arrived that day. "Cousin's house very cold. Rice ration cut again. Neighbor's baby died from hunger. But we endure. We are Japanese. We are Japanese." The words that once filled her with pride now felt like chains. What did it mean to be Japanese when Japan had sent her to die in a cave? When America fed her better than her emperor? When enemy kindness exceeded homeland cruelty? She rose and walked to the window. Across the compound, she saw Private Mitchell standing guard, his breath misting in the cold. He saw her and waved, just waved. A simple human gesture across an impossible divide. Tomorrow was Christmas. In Japan, her mother would wake to hunger and cold. In America, Yuki would wake to warmth and plenty. The guilt would come with morning coffee, sharp and bitter. But tonight, in the space between two worlds, she allowed herself to feel something forbidden. Gratitude. January brought news that changed everything. The occupation government in Tokyo announced new policies. Japanese women who had collaborated with Americans faced punishment. Collaboration included accepting food, medical care, or comfort beyond basic survival. Every woman in Camp McCoy was guilty. The announcement came during morning assembly. Captain Warner translated it slowly, his face grave. The Japanese government requests repatriation of all female prisoners. Ships depart from San Francisco in 2 weeks. Yuki felt the floor tilt. Home. They were going home. But home to what? To shame? To punishment? To mothers who would see American health in their faces and know their daughters' dishonor? That night, the barracks erupted in argument. Michiko paced like a caged tiger. "We have no choice. We must return. Our families wait." "What families?" Haruko's voice was flat. "Mine are ash in Tokyo. Yours, Michiko? Your father will see you healthy and fed while Japan starved. He will know you collaborated. A commander's daughter who ate enemy food while soldiers died hungry." "Then what?" Michiko's voice cracked. "Stay here forever? Become Americans?" The word hung in the air like incense, sacred and profane. 3 days passed in agony. The women barely ate, their appetites crushed by decision's weight. Private Mitchell noticed, bringing tea instead of coffee, rice when they refused bread, trying to comfort without understanding. Then Yuki received another letter. Not from her mother, from her uncle, her father's brother. "Your mother died last week. Pneumonia. No medicine. Do not return. Nothing here for you. Father would want you to live, even in disgrace." She read it standing in Wisconsin snow, each word a nail in her past's coffin. Orphan. She was orphan now, free and destroyed simultaneously. That evening, she found Captain Warner in the hospital. "If we refuse repatriation, what happens?" He set down his files, studied her carefully. "Complicated. You could apply for refugee status. Or—" He hesitated. "There's a program. War brides, they call it. Japanese women who married American soldiers, but also special visas for those with critical skills. Nurses, translators, people who could help with occupation efforts. We would be traitors. You would be survivors." That night she told the others. The room exploded. Michiko called her a coward. Haruko said nothing, which was worse, but 2 younger women, Keiko and Fumiko, listened with desperate attention. They too had received letters. Dead families, destroyed cities. Nothing to return to but shame. The next morning brought unexpected visitor. Mrs. Patricia Sullivan, Sergeant Sullivan's wife, arrived with the Midwest Women's Methodist Alliance. Church women armed with donations and determination. "We heard about your situation," Mrs. Sullivan said, a small woman with iron-gray hair and her husband's kind eyes. "We want to help. If any of you choose to stay, we have sponsor families, jobs, English classes." Michiko laughed bitterly. "Why? Why help enemies?" Mrs. Sullivan's hands folded calmly. "Because Christ teaches love. Because my son died at Pearl Harbor, and I can choose hate or help. Hate killed my boy. Help might save someone else's daughter." She left pamphlets, pictures of sponsored Japanese women in California, working in hospitals, attending schools, living in small apartments with flower boxes, building new lives from war's ashes. The days contracted toward departure. Camp McCoy's routine continued, meals, work, evening radio, but everything felt final. Last Monday, pancakes. Last Tuesday, library visit. Last Wednesday, when Private Mitchell brought the magazines and stayed to practice his Japanese, mangling pronunciations until they laughed. 5 days before the ships, Yuki made her decision. She stood before Captain Warner and spoke words that tasted like betrayal and freedom. "I request to stay." The paperwork was simple, too simple for changing worlds. Sign here, initial there. Congratulations, you're now stateless, homeless, free. Michiko found her packing that night. Coward, traitor, you dishonor every Japanese who died. They're already dead. My honor won't resurrect them. You choose comfort over duty. I choose life over death? Is that so wrong? Michiko slapped her. The sound cracked like breaking ice. Then she collapsed, sobbing, because she wanted to stay too. They all did, but wanting and choosing were different courages. 3 others joined Yuki: Keiko, Fumiko, and surprisingly, Haruko. I'm already ghost, Haruko explained. Might as well haunt a warm place. The night before departure, the camp held a farewell dinner. The leaving women ate silently, eyes down, while the staying ones forced conversation with American guards who'd become friends. Private Mitchell gave Yuki a package, his mother's cookbook, pages marked with recipes he'd seen her enjoy. For your new life, he said simply. Michiko left at dawn, 18 women with her, boarding buses for California. She didn't say goodbye. Through the window her eyes met Yuki's, anger, envy, understanding, loss, all in a glance that said everything. The bus disappeared into February frost, carrying them to ships, to Japan, to judgment. Yuki stood in Wisconsin mourning, stateless and strange, holding an American cookbook and a Japanese name. 2 weeks later, she moved to Madison. The Methodist women had arranged everything: a room with Mrs. Eleanor Hanson, a widow who needed company, a job at Madison General Hospital, her nursing license recognized under occupation authority, English classes at the university, where professors' wives volunteered as teachers. The first day at the hospital, she wore an American dress Mrs. Hanson had altered to fit, navy blue with white collar, professional and foreign. The other nurses stared, some with curiosity, some with hostility. One, Rebecca Morris, whose husband died in the Philippines, requested different shifts to avoid working with the enemy. But Dr. William Foster, the chief of medicine, made things clear. Miss Tanaka is a qualified nurse. She'll be treated as such. Anyone who disagrees can find employment elsewhere. Slowly, like spring ice melting, acceptance came. She saved a child from allergic reaction, recognizing symptoms American nurses missed. She worked double shifts without complaint. She ate lunch alone until Sandra Williams, a Negro nurse who knew about being outsider, sat with her one day and said, "This tuna salad is terrible. Want to share my husband's fried chicken?" Friendship built on fried chicken and shared exhaustion. She wrote to Haruko, now in Chicago, working as translator for the occupation government. Keiko had married her sponsor family's son, scandal and happiness combined. Fumiko studied at UCLA, becoming someone new with each English word learned. They were the ones who stayed, the ones who chose America's tomorrow over Japan's yesterday. November 28, 1955. Exactly 10 years since that day at Camp McCoy's window. Yuki, now Dr. Yuki Tanaka Mitchell, stood in her kitchen in Des Moines, preparing Thanksgiving dinner. Her husband Robert, yes, that Private Mitchell, carved turkey while their children, David 6 and Mary 4, set the table with careful concentration. Through the window she saw Iowa snow beginning to fall, same white as Wisconsin snow a decade ago. On the radio, Perry Como sang about catching a falling star. The house smelled of turkey and pumpkin pie, but also of rice and miso soup, because she made both now. American and Japanese, neither and both. A letter had arrived yesterday from Michiko, the first in 10 years. She was married to a factory worker living in rebuilt Osaka. 2 children. Enough food now. Sometimes, she wrote, she remembered Christmas dinner at Camp McCoy and wondered if choosing shame over comfort had been wisdom or stupidity. There is no answer, she wrote, only choices and consequences. You chose. I chose. We both survived. Perhaps that's enough. Yuki touched the letter, tucked in her apron pocket. Through the kitchen door, she watched Robert lift Mari onto his shoulders, the child shrieking with laughter. Her daughter who would never know hunger, never choose between honor and survival, never understand that her mother had once been enemy, prisoner, refugee, and finally, somehow, American. The smell of roasting turkey filled the house, that same smell from 10 years ago that had meant captivity and comfort, shame and salvation. Now it just meant home. The long journey from Nagasaki to Des Moines measured not in miles, but in forgiveness. Of others, of herself, of the strange truth that sometimes prison sets you free and freedom imprisons. She called her family to dinner in English and Japanese in voices of both her worlds. They came running, hungry and happy, to eat the feast she'd prepared. An American feast cooked by Japanese hands that had once treated dying soldiers, had once been bound as prisoner, had once pressed against glass, begging not for freedom, but for permission to stay. The snow fell harder now, covering Iowa in white forgiveness. And Yuki Tanaka Mitchell, former enemy, former prisoner, current American, served turkey to her family and remembered that December morning when she chose comfort over honor and discovered they might be the same thing viewed from different shores.